If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradesepodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades, forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
So we're here today. We have Trevor Botkin back with us co-hosting today. Thanks for being here, Trevor.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for having me, Karen. Always a pleasure to be here.
And we have Michael Kinsella with us today, who's from the new PPE. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks a lot for having me. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm just going to start talking, I guess. How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. I've never had a job outside construction my whole life. I got a job cleaning up job sites, pulling nails out of lumber and stacking them up when I was 13 years old for my dad's drinking buddy. I also have used substances pretty much my entire life, on and off. When I, at first it was just like, this is a job that gets me drinking money. And then it was, you're 14 years old, you're getting paid $15 an hour cash at the end of the week. I mean, you could live off that for the rest of your life, right? At 14 years old. So I dropped out of school and just went full-time construction when I was 14. When I was about 16, I overdosed for the first time. I ended up in the psych ward.
Wow.
And when I got out, I'll never ever forget it. When I got out, I had this bag with like my hospital robe, my fucking hospital slippers and everything else.
Yeah.
I went to my older brother's body shop. His boss was there drinking with a friend of his and his buddy. He asked me what I was going to do now. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, you want a job? He gave me a job on a site pretty close to my house. And, that was that. I didn't last that long at that job, but I'll never forget, like day 3, he's cutting beams with a chainsaw and he looks at me, he says, ask me if I want to go. And I was just hooked. That was it. It's construction for the rest of my life since that day. I'm 16 years old. He hands me a chainsaw and asks me to cut through this big parallelogram beam. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm in,
It gets you. It gets you.
Yeah.
It does.
Fucking love
Especially
it.
like at that age, it's like, I don't want to go to school. They let me smoke on site. There's beers after work, getting paid cash, and it's fucking fun.
Mm-hmm.
And the other things, like I wasn't much for like sports, team sports. I was a bit of a geeky kid, and going to a construction site and fitting in right away, it was like finally like the guys enjoy having me around. You know what I mean? I wasn't that popular of a kid, anything like that. So fitting in with this like group of like rough and tumble dudes at the time was like, it was cool. You know what I mean?
Totally relate to that, man. It was the first time I walked on a job site, I was like, these are my people.
Yeah, these are my people. And the other thing was, like they gave you shit, but then when someone else, like I'll never forget these plumbers screaming at me because I forgot to put a mushroom cap on a piece of rebar and he ripped his rain pants and he fucking tore into me. And I'm like the lowest level, I'm the guy cleaning up the lumber for our company. And one of the carpenters comes over and just guts the plumber for talking to me like that. Just guts him. It's like, I don't give a fuck if the kid made a mistake. Come to me. Don't ever fucking talk to him like that again. You know what I mean? Like they had my back right away. And it was just something I really felt they accepted regardless because I worked hard. All you got to do is work hard and we'll love
Exactly.
you. And, that guy who hired me that day with my hospital robes in hand, I ended up doing my entire apprenticeship under him. I got my red seal under him. I worked there. He gave me my first job as a foreman. He taught me how to drive. Like he actually taught me how to drive. It's like this construction gave me everything good in my life. It also gave me the funds to do everything stupid I ever did in my life.
Yeah.
But, I learned as many bad habits.
Seems to be a theme on this podcast.
It really does. I mean, I learned as many bad habits as I did good habits. But at the end of the day, like, for example, I spend the summers working at a fishing lodge in Rivers Inlet. And like I fly up there, I build one of a kind, once in a lifetime buildings in a place that's so beautiful. They make documentaries about it almost every 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I come home with 50 pounds of fish fillets. I get to fish in a place that people fly from all over the world to because someone gave me a trade.
Yeah.
Someone gave me a trade and it gave me They gave me everything I ever wanted if I worked hard enough to get it, and then knew how to keep it, which I seem to not be able to grasp. But
Well, you touched on something a minute ago too, which I don't think we talk enough about, is like there is this sense of duty in bringing up people in the trades. And like you mentioned there, like, you know, that guy that started you with your gowns, your hospital gowns in hand. I mean, that you worked your ass off for him, but he looked out for you. He made sure you got your driver's license. Like, you know, I always had a sense that you know, the construction trade took over where my parents left off in a lot of ways. And then as I rose up through the industry, it was never lost on me that I'm taking predominantly young men, and I am molding how they show up in the world. And I am leading them into those things like driver's licenses and like, you know, good, you know, sometimes just manners, right?
Yeah, how to treat people, how to treat women, how to treat men, how to, like, I actually call that guy every Father's Day as a, like, it's a little bit of a running joke, but I have a kid that calls me every Father's Day now, and he's like 30. So he'll be like, "Oh, hey dad," and we're out for dinner. Hey dad, how's it going? And I'm just like, fuck, man.
I always stick together, man.
But but it's the same thing. I taught him how to drive. I gave him his first car. Like, he's family, and like, we don't really get that anywhere else. You know, on top of all that though, I think getting my red seal is the definitive moment of my entire life. Like, I didn't graduate high school. I didn't get through the 8th grade, you know, not because I couldn't, but because it fucks the point of this. Yeah. Like, what am I doing here? I'm wasting my time. Not getting paid. Getting my red seal is without a doubt the greatest day of my entire life. I'll never ever forget it. I know how that sounds, but it still is. And like, when my friends get them, when my apprentices get them, I don't think there's anything I ever feel more proud of. Like, like when that guy that calls me dad told me he got his red seal, I was over the fucking moon. I felt like it was like the night I lost my virginity. I never been so happy. I was just so fucking proud of him.
I always joke that I got a long line of young men with driving trucks they can't afford and spending way too much money on their credit cards, and because they earn the right to do so. Yeah, that's exactly right though. Like, I remember going to Alberta for a job, and my superintendent took me. The superintendent, like, he's jumping ship. He wants me to come with him. And we're looking at like the agreement for the job, and he just looks at me. He's like, "This is the kind of money doctors make." I was like, "Yeah, it is." Yeah. It's like you don't deserve this even. I'm like, "No, I don't." But let's go get it. Like, yeah, absolutely. Of course, that said, there's also like, we absolutely destroy ourselves. Like, you know, I'm 37 and I'm 36 years old. Pardon me. And I'm looking at my mom's partner the other day, who's 73 years old, and he's complaining about his hip, and he's complaining about his back. And I'm like, I already feel the same pain you're talking about now. Yeah. I got 40 years to get to where you're at. Like, I wake up in constant pain. I was in a pretty bad accident a few years back. I got tossed 20 feet that way and 20 feet that way by 180,000 pounds tilt panel. When it slipped past another panel, the braces pinched. The brace hit me in the hip. I went flying. The guys all said it looked pretty cool, so I was happy about that. But as long as it looked cool, right? Yeah, they're like, it looked really cool. It was like you were flying. Like, you had a real good form. I was like, cool, guys, thanks. Somebody pick me up. Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, I had my back fused in 2004. I was 29 years old, and at the time, it was a badge of honor. Right. Absolutely. Me here, I am 20 some odd, 20 years later. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of life left to go with this back of mine. Yeah. But we don't, like when we're younger, we're coming in, we just see all the flashy stuff. I see those paychecks, and I'm always comparing my check against, all my friends that I know are still in university. Yeah. And I'm proud of that. But, there's a price. Like, there's a price we pay. Every single one of us is going to age faster. We're going to deal with the injuries like pro athletes. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, we get the same injuries as pro athletes without any of the glory, right? You're right. I mean, I can't count the amount of concussions I have. Usually I shave my head. You probably can't see it, but right here, I got 12 staples across the top of my head from a Burt bar. I remember like walking up from them, stripping a parquet and walking up, just like
Somebody give me some first aid. And my buddy turns around, looks at me, and I'm like, oh, is it bleeding? He's like, look at your shirt. I'm just covered in blood.
Yeah.
So I go to the lumber store to buy lumber. And
Like
the guy at
that.
the lumber store is like, because we go to the walk-in and they're like, oh, it's like a 4-hour wait. I'm like, oh, fuck. All right, when we go to the lumber store, I'll come back. So go to the lumber store, and the guy at the lumber store finally gives me some first aid. And I think it's like the coolest story in the world. And I'm so cool. And then later it's like, so concussions are real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so that's a thing. And yeah, you're right. Like we wear the injuries like badges. We wear the long hours like badges.
Yeah.
And we also wear the I was out all night drinking and I'm still here in the morning like badges.
Totally.
And, you know, I was doing rails all night while I laid out this fucking slab like badges.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the problems come from, right? Like we encourage each other to go further and further with everything, whether it's working harder, working more hours, drinking more, smoking more, etc.
Totally.
And you know, in today's world, it doesn't really work out too well. Like, you know, I always tell the guys it's not it's like a little joke. It's not your foreman's cocaine out there anymore, right?
No,
Hmm.
no,
You know, it's not your foreman's coke. Like, you need to be more careful. You need to be more on it. You probably shouldn't be high operating machines.
Yeah, well, that's the thing we don't talk a lot about, right? Is what's going on, you know, during business hours, because, you know, let's face it, people aren't overdosing, you know, during business hours, where the accidents, you know, and the suicides and the overdose, they're happening off the job site. But, you know, I knew countless guys, and myself included, who used to have to, you know, take some of the pain away in the morning. Used to have to bump up a little bit to get through the afternoon because you weren't living healthy. Like we weren't eating right, we weren't drinking right, we weren't sleeping right, and it was kind of like everybody's doing it, right?
Yeah, everybody's doing it, and I do agree with you. Like, everyone is doing it, and I do agree with you. Like, 99% of the fatalities aren't happening on site. Obviously, we all know that. The thing that I'm always concerned about is the fact that the death toll in our demographic is constantly going up. Meanwhile, it's getting more and more expensive to live here. Yeah, and people are working more and more hours. And there's also a shortage of trades workers coming up, which will lead to even more hours, even more people injured on site working anyway. You know, I don't know any tradesmen that aren't working Saturdays.
Accidents happen because people aren't paying attention, and people don't pay attention because they're overtired. There's a lot going on to there just to unpack. But like I say, the biggest mortality, like thing affecting mortality of construction workers is suicide and overdose. More than job site accidents, more than anything. And we're spending all the best hours of our life on job sites. And so, although I'm not looking to cast blame, I'm just looking for solutions. And if we have these men for 40, 50, 60 hours a week, how are we taking care of them in a way that they know that they're supported and they don't have to go and feel alone or use alone or do any of these things? Like, how do we start leading them into better places?
I mean, I agree with that 100%. I always say that once I started paying attention to safety, I'd actually wear safety glasses in my shop at home, and I'd actually stop standing 1 foot on the top step of the ladder to put the Christmas lights up and whatever else. We learn how to behave at work, and if we are on site from the minute we get up till an hour before we go to sleep, a lot of times during the week, surely there's 20 minutes in there, maybe once a month, where our safety meeting, our toolbox talk is about mental health, is about destigmatization, is about seeing and becoming familiar with naloxone kits. I'm not asking for naloxone kits to be on site because I believe people are going to start dropping like flies on site tomorrow. I'm asking for it because where else are we going to teach them?
Yeah.
A lot of guys won't stop on the way home for anything other than beer and cigarettes. They'll eat McDonald's because they don't want to cook a good meal. Yeah. You're going to tell me that guy who woke up in the morning and thought I should probably get a naloxone kit is still thinking he's going to stop at Shoppers on his way home after 14 hours of pouring concrete? Yeah. No, he's driving straight home. Yeah. We want them at work, and we want their entire lives given to their job, which is, you know, the society we live in. Sorry.
I think if I had to guess, Mike, the presence of those kits on a job site, and the conversation around them in itself starts to reshape the conversation and the awareness around the subject of overdose and the realities of this, right? Like, I think, once you start talking about it and you see the product, you see that naloxone kit, the red one or the black one sitting there, and you've been taught how to use it, it's something you carry with you off the job site. And it signals that my employer, my job site is a little farther ahead of the rest and cares about us. And if you're somebody living with that secret, you've just witnessed that my employer is having that conversation in a supportive way, in like, let's keep guys alive. And that's going to make a difference for me feeling other than or broken or not welcome, right?
Yeah. I'm still like, that's brilliant that you're understanding this, and like no one's taught it to you, you've just observed it, that we learn from our peers at the work site, and we learn socially, we learn through relationships and the context and the setting that we're in.
The oldest, most successful and well-documented teaching method on the face of the planet is the one that the industry is built around, which is the apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is a peer-to-peer support program.
Absolutely,
apprenticeship is about people passing down knowledge and leadership changing, cultures and passing down a culture. And I think we're in that space right now where the culture is shifting, kind of from the bottom up in some ways, because young people are coming into the industry with I've said it before on this podcast, they're not looking to sacrifice what guys like you and I did.
No, right? They are not.
They're not. And some of the old boys are like, these kids don't want to work. And I'm like, these kids don't want to get their back fused when they're 29 years old. Yeah. They don't want to get staples in their head. I agree. I don't feel that everybody has to pay the same dues as I did,
Yeah. And there's the attitude of like, oh, they're not as hard as us, but the actual attitude should be they're a lot smarter than us.
Yes.
Because they're working 100%. So they can afford to go to a concert.
Yeah.
I was working hoping to get off in time to go to the concert I'd already bought tickets to.
Right.
Oh, but guess what? Not going to make it. And I do agree with you. Like, the best way to learn is, like I always say, I don't know where I heard this. I know I didn't come up with it, but it's see one, do one, teach one. I watch someone do it. They show me how to do it. I do it with them together. I do it on my own. I start teaching someone else how to do it. That's the best way to pass down knowledge. That's why news and knowledge and stories, all as far back as you can go in history, are always passed down through stories, songs, whatever else. You share what you've learned with other people to spread knowledge. And you're right, like the culture is changing very, very much. And sometimes it's only changing so companies can cover their asses. And this is the society we live in now, so let's go on board. Yeah. There are other companies where people genuinely care. Yeah. And it doesn't just start at our generation either. There are a few people in the old guard that do genuinely care. And you know where that's coming from? That's coming from the fact that this toxic drug crisis has touched every single person in our province in some way. There's no one left who hasn't been affected. No. When I'm on the phone trying to get support, trying to get people to sign a letter of support or whatever else, I would say 2 out of 3 phone calls last a goddamn hour because they got a story, which is great to hear, obviously. Something. Like there's never someone who's like, oh, what drug crisis? It's affected every life in our province. And if our government and our society expect us to be at work 90% of our time, obviously not 90% of our time, but if they expect us to spend the majority of our lives working, then I believe that they should supply, or they should at least be on board with educating us in things that are affecting our demographic aggressively.
Yeah.
And educating you in a way that makes sense for you too, because as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about this model, I'm thinking, if you're doing this alongside your buddies and it's like part of your apprenticeship and you're not othering, and that's the problem that often comes in with, say, and I think all like public health campaigns and all that are good. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with them. We should keep doing them, but I don't identify with those. I don't see myself in those. And I will actually confess that when the drug crisis first happened, and they were saying to all, because I worked in mental health substance use services, and they were saying everybody needs to get a naloxone kit. But I worked mostly in high schools, in public schools, and I was like, oh, we don't need one. And everybody's like, yeah, you do. And I was like, no, we don't really need one. Like, this isn't really happening. And it wasn't widespread. It was a very, very it was a fraction of 1% of people that were dying from overdose that were under the age of 18, but still too many, right? But it was just like that othering thing. And so it was once again in the workplace where I was mentored by other people who had grasped the concept already, where I was able to make those changes. And because we don't identify it with ourselves. So that's why this is fucking brilliant.
I've lost several friends in the last 5 years. They were substance users. Nobody would have called them an addict. Nobody would. They were a guy that could go out on a Saturday night and pick up a gram, and then maybe that's all he used for another 2 or 3 months. It was just
which is crazy, by the way.
Right. For me, that's not my reality. To be clear, I will pick up all the drugs and do them all until they're gone, and then I'll get more, and I will piss off my dealer because I will not leave him alone at 4 a.m. That's my reality. But I've seen guys and lost guys that, they just go grab and they get that, fuck, man, if I've heard the story once, I've heard it 1,000 times. They picked up from somebody they didn't, know real well, or whatever. They didn't think twice about it. They get that bad line and boom, they're done. Like, we've interviewed people on this podcast that have had incredible experiences with overdose and toxic drugs that, by all accounts, like, they never struggled with their substance use. It wasn't affecting their life. The consequences to drug use can come so swiftly. Any line could be the last of you. It's unbelievable right now how scattered and unpredictable things are.
Kind of something we throw around a lot is like, just because someone's made a bad decision doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to make a good decision afterwards. And that good decision is having a kit, knowing how to use it, being honest with your friends, like, I'm doing this tonight, I'm doing that tonight, whatever. You start feeling, the big thing is always like, what do you do when you start feeling sick at a party?
Yeah.
Right? You go to the bathroom by yourself, right? Like, that's a huge problem, right?
Why I love the new PPE is just like the concept of it is so important for us to start thinking differently and just using that terminology that everybody already understands. And so, and it's easier then to make that very small leap into what we need to do and how we need to start talking and acting different. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the new PPE is doing and just kind of talk about the website and stuff a bit?
So basically, like, I talked with an old friend of mine from high school way back when, and he just moved back to Vancouver, and he was just like, what the fuck is going on here? Because he lived right in the city. And we started just talking. I do a bit of writing, so I had a book coming out, and they asked me to put out a little article to, promote it. So I wrote about the opioid crisis, and he read it. That's how we got back in touch. And then we just started talking more and more and debating the crisis and talking about what the fuck's going on out there, which is when I came across a fact that 1 in 5 deaths is a member of the trades, right? Mm-hmm. And that just like I said in the beginning of this, like, construction gave me everything good about my life. It gave me some bad things too, but I wouldn't change any of it. And I feel like I owe this industry every single thing I could possibly give it. And when I read that 1 in 5 deaths was in our industry or in a trade, I just started right away thinking, what can we do to change that? What can we do to help? How is this not in the first aid kit in our province, right? So we're talking about, petitioning Work Safe. We're talking about what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I just started calling guys I knew in the industry and saying, like, what do you think about having naloxone on site? What do you think about it? Well, I mean, do we really need it? I'm like, well, here's the facts. And if there's naloxone in the trailer and I'm walking past it every day and I'm learning how to use it, I'm becoming comfortable with it. And, so a lot of what we've been doing is just getting companies, unions, organizations, and also companies in the recovery space to sign a letter of support saying that we agree that naloxone should be a part of the occupational first aid kit, or should be a mandatory piece of first aid equipment, first aid supply on construction sites.
You touched on the other thing, which we haven't touched on a lot, is like we're building shit inside of communities, and what goes on outside of our fence, our construction fence, matters to us too. And like you pointed out, that the connection was a little broken, but I want to come back to it. We respond as workers when somebody scrapes their knee outside a job site. We do go intervene. When somebody trips,
Absolutely,
I've had this
we do.
where a senior citizen tripped outside our scent. She smashed her head. We were the first ones on scene to get her kind of bundled up and wait for the ambulance to arrive, right? And so, by the same extension, we're dealing with communities that are being affected by this crisis also. And if somebody drops outside of our job site, it is incredibly useful for a construction site to have a naloxone kit on site to be able to intervene, because time is of the essence.
Someday we'd like to do more than just talk about construction, but until that industry gets the attention it deserves, like, I don't feel ready to move on or talk about anything else. We are in a housing crisis. We are in massive inflation. Well, you know, construction is the number 2 contributor to our tax dollar, like only behind housing, which is obviously shored up by construction. And there's a massive retirement coming, and we can't afford to lose guys to preventable deaths. We just can't. Who's going to train the next generation? Who's going to build the houses we so desperately need? It's all connected. And if we don't start taking care of these guys and women, obviously guys, the royal guys, you know, it's never gonna, you know, our province is just heading towards a worse and worse situation.
You're brushing up against a great topic, which is, you know, attracting people into the industry. We're in a trade shortage. We got a lot of young people, as we identified earlier, that are looking to have a different experience in the construction sector than we had. And we don't, you know, if we're not taking these easy measures, right, common sense measures to keep our job sites safe and the people on them safe, and make them feel like they're looked after, then we're not attracting people into the industry.
Well,
We're
that's
just
exactly
not.
right. Well, why do you think we're getting plumb toilets on site all of a sudden, right? When there's starting to be a labor shortage, there's going to be an upcoming labor shortage. Better get some plumb toilets. Like, that's to attract the new generation. And we talked a little bit about it earlier, whether they're softer than us or just more intelligent than us and not willing to put up with as much shit as we did. Like, those toilets are going in to attract the new generation of workers. And if they don't feel like they're working somewhere where they are cared for and they are valued, they will not come.
Yeah. And you know, there's a version of me that's like, well, those kids have to suffer too, you know, like, but you know, there's a bigger version of me that's like, you know, good for them, right? Like, I'm glad they don't. I always look at it, if my kids went into this industry, how would I feel about it, right? Like, and be like, you guys got to be careful. You don't want to make the sacrifices I did, right? And so by that extension, I'm happy to see the next generation get more than what we had, because they deserve it.
100% they do. And again, like, when this industry is so heavily relied upon by our government and this province, like, it shouldn't be an argument to get this simple piece of equipment that's proven to work on site, just in case. Even if it saves one life, what's it really costing on a $27 million project? What's it costing to get a couple kits on site?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Right?
How can we help? How can the audience be of service to you, Michael?
I think the biggest thing is, I mean, if you go to our website, thenewppe.org, you can find a, you know, supporters, sign up to be a supporter. You can find email information for your member of parliament, for the Minister of Labor, the Minister of Mental Health. And you can reach out and say, we want this in our province. We need this in our workplace. You know, and that's Or you can just go, even just for now, just go to Shoppers, go wherever, ask for a kit. We do have a take-home naloxone program that provides intramuscular naloxone. Take it and take it to work and tell your employer you want this. Tell your employer to go to our website and sign up to support the idea.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can workers, workers are kind of holding all the cards right now too, right? So, I mean, if you're a worker, I think my takeaway of episodes like this and of our podcast in general is go ask for more. Go ask for more. Go ask for those kits to be on site. Go ask for there to be more resources and a better understanding and a better conversation in your job sites surrounding mental health and addiction. Tell your employers, tell the employment sector that you guys want more.
Absolutely. Ask for what you're worth, and you are absolutely worth a safe fucking work site. Like, come on.
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. The content of this podcast is conversation between people with living experience and should not be taken as professional advice. Special shout out to the new PPE for making a difference in the lives of construction workers and the community in general. thenewppe.org. Help save lives. Go to tradespodcast.com and click on the link under Enter to win a $200 grocery card. When you fill out the survey, you help us understand what's working and what's not. Each survey for each episode listened to is a separate entry. Information collected is for survey purposes only and is not shared. Help us, help you.